She described herself in 4 words on her Instagram page: entrepreneur, hustler, Kingston's mom. That was the entire bio. No fluff, no lengthy self-promotion. Just the 3 things that defined who she was in the order she chose to put them. And underneath those 4 words were 31,000 followers, 2 downtown Lafayette businesses, and a woman who had spent her entire adult life building something from nothing in a city that was not always ready to see a black woman walk through the doors of the nightlife industry and plant her flag like she owned the place. Because she owned the place. She owned 2 of them. LuLu Carter, known to almost everyone who loved her as Lulu, was 40 years old. She was born in Metairie, Louisiana on March 29, 1985, to Herbert and Florence Carter, and she grew up surrounded by the kind of family warmth that never quite leaves a person, and no matter how far they travel or how much they build. She was a basketball captain, a dance team captain, a track and field athlete, a volleyball player, and an academic standout. She earned a basketball scholarship to LSU Eunice and a track and field scholarship to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette simultaneously. Not one, 2. At the same time. She chose LSU Eunice, kept her focus, kept building, and never stopped. That was LuLu Carter, a person who, from the very beginning, did not wait for permission. Welcome to Behind the Evidence. This channel exists to go past the headline and into the full picture, the person behind the case, the pattern behind the act, and the truth that deserves more than a 60-second news segment. If you are new here, subscribe now. We bring stories like this one every single week, and this story in particular is one that should not be allowed to fade quietly into the archive of cases that get a few days of coverage and then disappear. Now let's go back to where it all started. LuLu Carter came from Lettsworth, Louisiana, a small community in Point Coupee Parish about an hour north of Baton Rouge. She was baptized at St. Mary Baptist Church at a young age. Faith was part of her foundation from the beginning, something she carried into her adult life as a member of Royal Oak Baptist Church and a frequent visitor to Our Savior's Church in Lafayette. The faith was not decorative. It was operational. It shaped the way she moved through the world, the way she cared for people, the way she approached the businesses she built. Her childhood was spent moving between family homes, her grandparents, her aunts, her uncles, and her cousins. She had a special bond with her grandmothers, Harriet and Mattie. She loved fashion from the very beginning, styling Barbie dolls with the same eye for detail that she would later bring to the clothing boutiques, the hair salons, the cocktail lounges that became her legacy. She was someone who could see what something could be before it existed, and then build it into existence through sheer determination and willingness to work. By the time she arrived in Lafayette as a young adult, LuLu Carter was not waiting for the city to come to her. She was already moving: clothing boutiques, hair salons, barbershops, real estate investments. She had her hands in multiple industries simultaneously, building a portfolio of businesses that reflected the breadth of her vision and the depth of her work capacity. But it was the nightlife ventures that put her name on the map in Acadiana in a way that could not be ignored. Bliss Cocktail Lounge came first. Located at 201 Jefferson Street in downtown Lafayette, Bliss became more than a business. It became a community gathering space, a place where people came together to celebrate and connect and feel, as the phrase her patrons coined put it, bliss me, meaning blessed me. That phrase, invented organically by the people who loved what she had created, tells you something essential about what LuLu Carter built. She did not just open a bar. She built an atmosphere that made people feel something. She built a place where community happened. And in the nightlife industry, which is saturated with venues that open and close within 18 months, building something that generates its own language among its own community is an extraordinary achievement. French 75 Bar and Lounge came next, on McKinley in downtown Lafayette. Another venue, another space designed with the specific attention to detail and the specific understanding of what a community gathering place needs to feel like, that LuLu brought to every project she touched. By the time she was 40 years old, she had two thriving downtown venues, a real estate investment portfolio, and a new appointment that represented perhaps the most significant professional milestone she had yet reached. She had been named coordinator for Hub City Plaza, formerly the Northgate Mall in Lafayette, a major retail space being reimagined and restored as a hub for local businesses. The city had looked at her track record, at everything she had built, and entrusted her with helping to shape something that would affect the entire Lafayette business community. There was still so much more to come. That is what people who knew her said afterward, not in the soft, generic way that people reach for language at funerals, but with the specific weight of people who had watched her build for years and knew she was nowhere near finished. She was 40 years old. She was at the beginning of what would have been her most significant decade. She had proven she could build a business. She was now being trusted to build something for an entire community. And on December 30th, 2025, 2 days before the new year that was supposed to carry all of that forward, James Michael Joseph walked into her home on Delham Avenue in Scott and shot her. James Michael Joseph was 44 years old. He and LuLu Carter had a child together, a son. That child, Kingston, appears in LuLu's Instagram bio as the third thing she was, Kingston's mom. The relationship between Joseph and LuLu had been romantic at some point. By December 2025, that romance was over. LuLu had ended it. She had made her decision clearly and, according to accounts of what happened that afternoon, had communicated it directly and without ambiguity. She was done. The relationship was finished. He needed to go. James Joseph's response to that decision is the center of this entire case. And it is a response that follows a pattern so consistent across intimate partner homicide cases that forensic researchers have documented it extensively. And yet it keeps appearing, case after case, because the pattern does not resolve on its own. It requires intervention. It requires systems that take the refusal to accept a breakup as seriously as the explicit threat that sometimes accompanies it. It requires a cultural framework that understands the words "if I cannot have you, no one can," not as a dramatic expression of heartbreak, but as a statement of intent that deserves to be treated with the full weight of what it is. Because that is what James Joseph allegedly said when LuLu told him it was over. "If I cannot have you, no one can." Those words have appeared in this case from multiple reporting sources. They are the kind of words that, in the moment they are spoken, can be dismissed as emotion talking, as hyperbole, as the language of a man in pain reaching for the most dramatic expression available to him. But the research on intimate partner homicide tells us something different about those words. It tells us that statements of that nature, made in the context of a relationship ending by a partner who is struggling to accept that ending, are among the highest-risk verbal indicators in the spectrum of warning signs. They are not dramatic expressions of heartbreak. They are statements of possessiveness so total that they include within them the logic of destruction. "If I cannot have you, no one can" is not the language of someone who is grieving. It is the language of someone who does not recognize the other person's right to exist independently of the relationship. James Joseph pulled out a firearm. He shot LuLu Carter, and then, with LuLu's body still in that house, he picked up his phone and called his best friend. Jessie Howard Alfred Jr. was 49 years old. He and Joseph had a friendship that went back far enough that Joseph's first instinct after committing a killing was to call him. He did not call for help. He did not call emergency services. He called someone he trusted to help him manage the consequences of what he had just done. According to investigators, Alfred was contacted to help fabricate an alibi, to construct a story that would place Joseph somewhere other than LuLu Carter's home on Delham Avenue at 2:30 in the afternoon on December 30th, 2025. Scott Police Department officers responded to reports of a shooting in the 800 block of Delham Avenue at approximately 2:30 p.m. When they arrived, they found LuLu Carter with gunshot wounds. Emergency services transported her to a local hospital. Despite everything medical staff attempted, she did not survive. The woman who had built Bliss in French 75 from the ground up, who had been trusted to help reimagine Hub City Plaza, who had 31,000 people following her journey on Instagram, was pronounced dead. Her son Kingston had just lost his mother, 2 days before the new year, 1 day before New Year's Eve. The investigation moved with the kind of efficiency that the evidence apparently made possible. Scott police identified James Michael Joseph as a suspect through the course of their inquiry. The alibi construction that Alfred had allegedly helped facilitate did not hold. Investigators saw through it. Joseph was arrested at approximately 5:12 p.m. on December 31, 2025, in the 300 block of Vermilion Street in Lafayette, less than 24 hours after LuLu Carter was killed. He was charged with second-degree murder. He was booked into the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center and held without bond. Jessie Howard Alfred Jr. was arrested the same day on a charge of accessory after the fact of second-degree murder. He was subsequently released on bail. The distinction between the two charges reflects the distinction between their alleged roles. Joseph is accused of pulling the trigger. Alfred is accused of helping cover it up afterward. Both charges represent serious criminal liability. Only one of them carries the weight of what happened to LuLu Carter on December 30th. Now, let's talk about what is underneath this case. Because what happened to LuLu Carter is not simply a crime story. It is a story about a specific and well-documented intersection of factors that, taken together, create some of the most dangerous conditions in any relationship. And understanding those factors is not an academic exercise. It is the difference between seeing this case as an isolated tragedy and seeing it as what it actually is, which is a predictable outcome of a recognizable pattern that, with the right tools and the right response, can be interrupted before it becomes irreversible. The first factor is economic disparity. LuLu Carter was, by any measure, the more financially successful partner in this relationship. She owned multiple businesses. She had a real estate portfolio. She had just been appointed to a significant community role. Her Instagram bio identified her as an entrepreneur and a hustler. James Joseph did not have an equivalent public professional profile. Community members who commented on the case after her death identified jealousy and resentment over her success as part of what drove the violence. One commenter wrote that Joseph was obsessed with her. Another described the act in terms of a man who could have had everything but chose destruction instead. Forensic psychologists who study intimate partner homicide have documented the relationship between economic disparity and lethal violence within relationships. When a partner, particularly a male partner in a heterosexual relationship, perceives the other person as having more status, more independence, more external recognition, the threat that accompanies that partner's departure is amplified. The loss is not just the loss of the relationship. It is the loss of the connection to everything that person represents, their success, their visibility, their autonomy. And when the person who is leaving is also the person who has more to leave to, the psychology of the person being left can tip toward the most extreme expression of the belief that her value is his to control. LuLu Carter was not just leaving James Joseph. She was leaving him to continue building a life that was already more expansive and more promising than anything he had access to without her. And according to what was allegedly said in those final moments, what we can describe as the "if I cannot have you" framework, he had already processed her departure as an act done against him rather than a choice made for herself. The second factor is the presence of a child. Kingston was LuLu's son. He was also James Joseph's child, and the presence of a shared child is one of the most consistent complicating factors in domestic violence situations that turn lethal. It creates ongoing contact. It creates a reason for continued proximity. It makes a clean separation structurally impossible. And it can create in an abusive partner the sense that the shared child constitutes a claim on the other person's life that does not expire when the relationship does. The child becomes, in the most dangerous psychological frameworks, not just a child but a tether. And when the person who has been using that tether decides to leave anyway, the tether can become a wire. Kingston lost his mother on December 30th, 2025. He lost her at the hands of his father. Whatever his age, whatever his current understanding of what happened, he will grow up carrying both of those facts inside him simultaneously. That is a weight that no child should carry. And it is a weight that lands directly on the small shoulders of a boy whose mother described him on her public profile as the third most important thing she was, right after entrepreneur and hustler, because to LuLu Carter, Kingston was not separate from her identity as a businesswoman and a builder. He was part of it. He was what she was building toward. The third factor is the alibi construction. The fact that James Joseph's first instinct after shooting LuLu Carter was to call a friend and attempt to build a false account of his whereabouts is a detail that speaks to premeditation in a way that is not always immediately visible but becomes very clear under examination. A person who commits an act of violence in an uncontrolled emotional state does not typically, in the immediate aftermath, organize a coordinated response to the investigation. The act of calling Jessie Alfred and asking for help constructing a story requires the shooter to be thinking ahead, to be processing the consequences, to be making calculated decisions about how to manage what has just occurred. That is not the cognitive profile of someone overwhelmed by a loss of control. That is the cognitive profile of someone who knew what they were doing and wanted to avoid being held responsible for it. Detectives, to their credit, did not take long to see through the constructed account. The arrest of Joseph within roughly 3 hours of the shooting, in a specific location in Lafayette where investigators were apparently able to track him, suggests that the investigation moved quickly and with confidence in the direction of the evidence. The alibi did not work. The arrest came fast. And James Michael Joseph, who had allegedly told the woman he could not live without that no one else would have her, was in the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center before the day was out. But LuLu was still gone. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and neither one cancels the other. The Lafayette community's response to LuLu Carter's death was immediate, loud, and sustained in a way that reflects the specific kind of community investment she had built over years of showing up. The business community, her colleagues, her friends, her family, all of them flooded social media with the kind of grief that comes from losing someone who was genuinely central to the fabric of a place. People described her as a fashionista, business-oriented, loved to travel, God-fearing. Someone who always dressed to impress, even when she was dressing down. Someone who entered rooms in a way that made the rooms better. Her funeral was held on January 10th, 2026, at Zion Travelers Baptist Church in New Roads, Louisiana, with 4 reverends presiding over the service. The Acadiana community gathered in numbers that reflected not the reach of a social media account, but the reach of a woman who had spent decades building real relationships in real rooms with real people. Her obituary, which reads like a portrait of someone who was nowhere near the end of what they were going to accomplish, noted that there was still so much more to come. That phrase sits differently after everything that followed December 30th, because there was more to come. She had been appointed to Hub City Plaza. She had 31,000 people watching. She had Kingston. She had plans that no one besides her fully knew the scope of. And all of it was stopped by a man who decided that if he could not have her, the plan stopped too. James Michael Joseph is in the Lafayette Parish Jail without bond. Jesse Howard Alfred Jr. has been released pending his legal proceedings on the accessory charge. The case is being prosecuted in Louisiana, where second-degree murder carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole if the accused is convicted. Louisiana does not have a second-degree murder. There is no negotiated down from second-degree murder to a lesser charge that changes the sentencing outcome significantly. If James Joseph is convicted of what he has been charged with, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. That outcome, if it comes, will not reopen the doors of Bliss Cocktail Lounge. It will not restore what Hub City Plaza lost when it lost its new coordinator. It will not give Kingston his mother back. It will not undo a single second of December 30th, 2025, but it will constitute accountability. And accountability in cases where a woman built everything she had, and a man decided that her right to live independently of him was not hers to exercise, is the least that the system can deliver. LuLu Carter was 40 years old. She was an entrepreneur, a hustler, and Kingston's mom. She had a basketball scholarship and a track scholarship at the same time and chose her own path. She built Bliss from nothing and watched her community invent its own language to describe what they felt inside its walls. She built French 75 and gave Lafayette another room where milestones got celebrated. She was about to help reimagine a mall into a hub for local businesses. She dressed to impress even when she was dressing down. She loved to travel and explore the world. She shared her home with her parents, caring for them with love and devotion. She was her grandmother's girl. She was her cousin's family. She was an inspiration to 31,000 people. And she was taken on December 30th, 2025, in her own home by the father of her child, because she made the decision that she had every right to make. Her name was LuLu Carter. The world called her LuLu, and the world is smaller for not having her in it. If you or someone you know is navigating the end of a relationship that feels unsafe, or a partner who responds to the idea of separation with anger that feels disproportionate or threatening, please take that seriously. Please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. It is free, confidential, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by call, text, and online chat at the hotline.org. And please know that the most dangerous words in an ending relationship are the ones that frame the other person's life as something the speaker has authority over. Those words are not heartbreak. They are a warning. Subscribe to Behind the Evidence. Share this video for LuLu, for Kingston, for every woman who has built something extraordinary and deserves to live long enough to see where it goes. Behind the evidence, there is always more, and we are always going to find it.